Inside Minerva's temple, the sea god Neptune violates Medusa, a woman famous for her beauty. The goddess turns away and covers her eyes with the aegis. Then she changes Medusa's admired hair into snakes. Neptune receives no transformation at all. This is the Medusa many people recognize today, a beautiful woman assaulted in a sacred place, changed after the violence done to her, and later killed by Perseus. It is often presented as the original Greek myth. But this scene survives in this form near the end of Book 4 of Ovid's Metamorphoses, a Roman poem completed around AD 8. By then, Greek poets and artists had already been imagining Gorgons for roughly 7 centuries. That does not make Ovid's version false. It makes the word original dangerous. Ancient mythology had no single authorized book. Stories moved through oral performance, poetry, painted pottery, temple sculpture, local traditions, theater, and later mythographic collections. A later poet could preserve old material, combine different traditions, reinterpret something familiar, or give a new explanation for an image people had known for centuries. Medusa did not have one biography. She had layers. Some of the earliest surviving Greek poetry does not introduce her as a beautiful woman transformed into a monster at all. In the Iliad, the Gorgon's terrifying head already appears on armor. Athena carries the image on the aegis. Agamemnon's shield bears another grim Gorgon surrounded by terror and rout. In the Odyssey, Odysseus flees the land of the dead because he fears Persephone might send the Gorgon's head against him. These passages do not explain Medusa's childhood, her beauty, or how she acquired her power. They barely explain the Gorgon at all. They assume the audience already understands what that face means. Before Medusa became a tragic character, the Gorgon could function as concentrated terror. Hesiod's Theogony, composed around the late 8th or early 7th century BC, gives us more. Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa are daughters of the sea deities Phorcys and Ceto. Stheno and Euryale cannot die. Medusa can. Hesiod says that Poseidon lay with Medusa in a meadow among spring flowers. He does not tell us whether the encounter was consensual. Medusa does not speak. And when Perseus later cuts off her head, Pegasus and Chrysaor emerge from her body, children conceived with Poseidon. There is no temple in this account, no admired hair, no priesthood, no transformation by Athena. Hesiod simply introduces Medusa as one of the Gorgons. That does not prove no Greek storyteller knew some other version. Surviving evidence is not the same thing as everything anyone ever told. It tells us what this early account preserves and what it does not. The visual evidence makes the story even less tidy. Across the archaic Greek world, Gorgon faces appeared on temples, pottery, shields, armor, architectural decoration, jewelry, and other objects. Many stare directly at the viewer, an unusually confrontational pose in Greek art. Their eyes bulge, their mouths gape. Some have tusks, protruding tongues, beards, wings, or serpentine features, and the details are not identical from one image to another. The image commonly called the Gorgonian, the frontal head or face of a Gorgon, developed a cultural life beyond any single written version of Medusa's story. It is usually understood as apotropaic. Something frightening could be placed at a vulnerable boundary to frighten danger away. On armor, the Gorgon could threaten the enemy while protecting the person behind it. On a temple, the monstrous face could confront danger before it entered sacred space. The same image could be terrifying and protective, and Greek artists were not simply illustrating Hesiod. Images formed traditions of their own. They could preserve meanings that poetry did not explain, alter familiar forms, or make a symbol powerful without giving it a biography. By around 490 BC, Pindar gives us another layer. After Perseus kills Medusa, her immortal sisters cry out in grief. Athena hears their terrible lament, especially the wailing of Euryale, and transforms its sound into music for the aulos. The poem still celebrates Perseus. Athena still protects the hero. But now the creatures pursuing him are also sisters mourning one of their own. Medusa is not yet Ovid's violated beautiful woman, but she is no longer emotionally isolated from the beings around her. Perseus cannot be removed from this history either. In the heroic tradition, killing Medusa allows him to escape a trap set by King Polydectes and ultimately protect his mother, Danae. Later Greek mythography gives the quest many of the objects modern audiences recognize: the special bag, winged sandals, the cap of invisibility, a cutting weapon, and divine assistance. It also preserves the famous reflective method. In the library, attributed to Apollodorus, Athena guides Perseus while he watches Medusa's reflected image in a bronze shield, rather than looking directly at her. That method is ancient, but it does not appear in Hesiod. Even something as familiar as Perseus using a reflective shield belongs to a particular layer of the tradition, not one complete story transmitted unchanged from the beginning. After Medusa is killed, her power does not disappear. Perseus carries the head and uses it against enemies. Later tradition connects it with Athena's aegis, or shield. That creates an interesting reversal. The terrifying image that much earlier poetry already associated with divine armor eventually receives a narrative explaining how the head got there. Myth does not always move neatly forward. Sometimes, a later story explains a symbol that was already old. Medusa's face was changing too. During the classical and Hellenistic periods, Greek artists increasingly softened the older Gorgon's grotesque features. Tusks and beards could disappear. The face became more recognizably human, sometimes even beautiful. The supernatural danger remained, but beauty and terror were already beginning to occupy the same image before Ovid wrote his poem. Then, centuries after Hesiod, Ovid gives the surviving tradition something extraordinarily powerful: a cause. Near the end of Book 4 of the Metamorphoses, Perseus is asked why Medusa alone among the Gorgon sisters has snakes mixed through her hair. His answer is brief. Medusa, he says, had once been exceptionally beautiful. Her hair was especially admired. Then the ruler of the sea violated or defiled her in Minerva's temple. Minerva turned away and covered her chaste eyes with the aegis. Then she transformed Medusa's beautiful hair into serpents. The Latin is compressed, and translations matter. One influential older English translation softened the encounter into Neptune attaining Medusa's love. Modern translations are much more likely to render the act as violation or sexual assault. The grammar makes the sea god the actor and Medusa the object of what happens. But Ovid does not narrate the assault itself. He gives Medusa no interior monologue. He never tells us what she thought. And several details repeated constantly in modern versions simply are not there. Ovid does not call Medusa a priestess of Minerva. He gives her no vow of chastity. He never says Minerva was jealous because Medusa was more beautiful. And he does not say the goddess transformed Medusa to protect her from future men. Those are later interpretations and retellings. Even describing what Minerva does as simply punishing Medusa requires more precision. Ovid says the goddess changes Medusa's hair so that what happened in the temple would not go unpunished. But the strange consequence is impossible to miss. Neptune committed the act. Medusa's body received the transformation. Ovid does not stop to explain that moral imbalance. nor does he explicitly say Minerva blamed Medusa for what happened. That interpretation comes from trying to understand why the person subjected to the violation is also the person physically changed afterward. And Ovid explains specifically why Medusa has serpents in her hair. He does not clearly describe one single moment in which an ordinary human woman receives every monstrous feature and power later associated with the Gorgon. The petrifying gaze already exists in the Perseus story surrounding this explanation. Even here, the familiar modern version is smoother than the ancient text. We also cannot prove that Ovid invented the entire transformation story himself. He presents parts of it as something reported, and some modern scholarship has argued that he may be alluding to an earlier story now lost. That possibility matters, but a lost source cannot become evidence simply because it would make the tradition easier to reconstruct. The safer conclusion is narrower. Ovid gives us the earliest surviving account that clearly joins Medusa's famous beauty, the violation in Minerva's temple, and the transformation of her admired hair into snakes. And that combination changes the moral shape of the story. A monster can enter a hero's adventure as an obstacle. A woman who becomes monstrous forces the audience to ask what happened before the hero arrived. Perseus still has motives. He still has divine support. He still has a mother to protect. But Medusa now has a past. Her death can be viewed from more than one direction. Later artists and writers continued changing that balance. Renaissance and early modern artists repeatedly returned to the severed head, combining terror, beauty, violence, and artistic virtuosity. In the modern period, especially through feminist writing and reinterpretation, sympathy increasingly shifted toward Medusa herself. She could become a survivor, a symbol of female rage, a protective figure, a representation of violence endured and power reclaimed. Those meanings should not be projected backward and called what archaic Greeks secretly believed. They are modern receptions, but that does not make them irrelevant to the history of Medusa. Because reception is not what happens after a myth is finished. It is how myth continues. The frightening face on an archaic shield could repel danger. The head carried by Perseus could turn danger against his enemies. Ovid's serpents gave an ancient monster a human past. Modern Medusa asks what happens when the audience begins caring more about the monster's story than the hero who killed her. None of these versions can simply erase the others. What modern audiences call the Medusa myth is an inheritance assembled from Greek poetry, protective imagery, heroic storytelling, Roman literature, translation choices, later art, and modern moral imagination. Medusa survived not because every generation told exactly the same story. She survived because every generation found another meaning in her face. So when we call one version of Medusa the original myth, are we really recovering the ancient past, or choosing the version that best answers the questions of our own time?